And there's such an ample opportunity for mistakes to take place that it puts us at great risk. Now, mistakes have been made in the past, and I'll give you 2 examples. It's something that keeps one up awake at night. And these are only 2. In 1980, during the Carter administration, there was a message from NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, that monitors missiles in the air, in our airspace, that there were hundreds and then thousands of missiles coming towards the United States at that time. The president has minutes to react to that. Fortunately, at the last minute, Carter's national security advisor, Zbigniew Brzezinski, called him and told him that this was a mistake and there were no missiles coming our way. And it turned out that the mistake was caused by a defective 46 cents worth computer chip in the NORAD system. In 1979, also Carter was awakened in the middle of the night to be told that there were thousands of missiles headed our way. And he had at the most 20 minutes to unleash our own missile capacity. Again, at the last minute, he was told by telephone by Brzezinski that accidentally a training tape with training of thousands of missiles coming, a simulation of thousands of missiles aiming at us at that time, that training tape had inadvertently been inserted into the real-time monitoring system of NORAD. And it was only a couple of minutes at the most that kept us from annihilation. You know, people don't know that. I didn't know it until I read it, but that's authenticated. And there have been other instances too, but I just mentioned 2. Now there is a precedent for interposing other individuals high up in the administration between a president's command to launch nuclear weapons or to institute any kind of emergency action. There is a precedent for intercepting those commands and preventing them from being carried out. And you'll maybe not be surprised to learn that during the waning days of the Nixon administration, when he was facing impeachment, he was drinking heavily and very paranoid and very depressed, and his high administration staff was very concerned about him. On one occasion, he marveled out loud with his staff, "Do you realize I could go into that other room and press a button and 25 million people could be killed?" So his staff became so alarmed at his behavior that they made an agreement among themselves to intercept any emergency order that he made and have those orders immediately transmitted to Schlesinger, his defense secretary, and to Henry Kissinger. Schlesinger was the defense secretary and Kissinger was the secretary of state. So if Nixon was out of line in any way, Kissinger and Schlesinger would hear about it at first. Ultimately, they took away the nuclear codes from Nixon. So there is a precedent. What I'm seeking is that checks be put in place now, right now, on Trump's ability to launch any kind of nuclear weapon or initiate any war. And this covers the little space that isn't covered by the legislation proposed by Representative Raskin, and also the legislation that's proposed by Ted Lieu and Ed Markey. Both of those require congressional action to pass, but between now, this very moment, and the time that congressional action will take place on those, there remains this space where we're very, very vulnerable. I also should mention that it turns out that we don't need immediate retaliatory response to missiles coming our way. This is a holdover from the Cold War, when it was thought that in a single rush of missiles, one country could be completely incapacitated and unable to send out their missiles. But our missiles, our triad of nuclear defense and offense, is so spread out in the oceans on submarines and ICBMs and airplanes that there's no way that an attack on our country by some other country's nuclear missiles could wipe out our opportunity to retaliate completely and wipe out those countries. So there's no need for the 3 a.m. phone call to respond by sending out retaliatory nuclear weapons before an adversary's weapons reached us. So there isn't even that urgency. So I'm pushing very hard for that. I wrote a letter to Secretary Mattis, which actually got delivered to his own big post office. I certified it, determined that it had been delivered, and of course, as I expect, there's no return receipt that's been sent to me. But I also looked upon this as an opportunity to speak to Representative Raskin, to give him my letter that I sent to Mattis, and to implore Raskin to, from within the government, to try to initiate some kind of system of checks so that they could work on that now. I think as a private citizen on the outside, it's almost impossible to penetrate the government itself. But I was very happy that Representative Raskin was here so that I would be able to give him this letter, and he said that he would read it. Do I have time just to say why I'm comfortable speaking about this? Because the Goldwater Rule has come up a lot. I'm a member of the American Psychiatric Association. I'm not intimidated by the Goldwater Rule. If I didn't want to worry about it, I'd just quit the association, but I feel that I want to remain a contributing member of the association. And the reason I feel comfortable speaking out is because, as many people don't know, there's a preamble to the Code of Ethics of the American Psychiatric Association. I've been on ethics committees and headed ethics committees for many years, and I know that often ethical canons are in contradiction with one another. They conflict. For example, canons that determine complete confidentiality can be overrun in cases of child abuse or domestic abuse or threats to harm others or the self, because that takes priority over confidentiality, privacy considerations. The preamble contradicts and I believe supersedes the Goldwater Rule. And I'm going to read you the preamble just so you see what I mean. This is the preamble to the Code of Ethics of the American Psychiatric Association, and it's the same as the preamble to the Code of Ethics of the American Medical Association. The medical profession has long subscribed to a body of ethical statements developed primarily for the benefit of the patient. As a member of the profession, a physician must recognize responsibility to patients first and foremost, as well as to society, to other health professionals, and to the self. First and foremost, our responsibility is to patients, our patients, and to society. Not to public figures, not to President Trump, who's not a patient, but first and foremost to our patients and society. And since I've started speaking out, and by chance it's gotten publicized, I've gotten all kinds of communications from patients and family and friends thanking me for having spoken out, as opposed to feeling that their privacy is at risk of being betrayed. The only heavily negative criticism that I've received for speaking out has been an expose on me, published by Breitbart News. And this expose, my older son considers a badge of honor. Anyway, that's why I feel comfortable speaking now, because I'll defend the position taken by the preamble. Thanks a lot.
Because we're going to have a question and answer period, so Dr. Bose, Dr. Frank, we're going to see there, we're going to have to just pass the defective microphone around. But I do want to pick up on just one thing Dr. Zinner said, because I actually made a personal promise to Dr. Richard Green, and he's our duty to warn member in Los Angeles, that I would put in a plug for the law that he was referring to, the Ted Lieu and Ed Markey's law, that says that a nuclear strike could not be ordered without the approval of Congress. And actually, he convinced me last night that that may be more important than HR 1987, which I'm so focused on, because I think Dr. Zinner explained it very clearly. We really are in a situation in which a madman, a vindictive, unstable madman, has the unilateral power to initiate nuclear weapons. So that is a very scary thing. Donald Trump has a gun to the entire world's head. And that's just a fact. That's not exaggeration. So on that, again, pleasant note, we may have to... the other mics to work.
I have this one working.
Don't work. Okay, okay. So then maybe...
I think so, right?
Yes. Okay. So, are you going to after the audience?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So let me, we'll just have to share it like with a talking stick or whatever. So,
hello, my name is Mauricio Cortina. I'm a local psychiatrist, and I want to address the issue that was brought up about what Jamie Raskin said, that it's not necessary nor sufficient condition for somebody to be mentally ill to really take them out of the presidency. So the question is, where does that leave us? And I want to make a suggestion. Where I think it leaves us is that we can still have a very strong position based on the tradition that John mentioned, and that comes from the tradition of people who have witnessed trauma or witnessed the Holocaust, which is the duty to be witness of evil, that we have a moral obligation to speak up when we see evil. And to do that, we do not have to put a label of mental illness on the president. We can just describe what everybody, Republicans and Democrats, thoughtful, are saying about him, which agrees with what other psychiatrists and other thoughtful people are saying. That could be our position. So the other reason why I think it would be a mistake to try to go at it by labeling him is that I think it might have unintended consequences of treating the people who have mental illness. That it's going to stigmatize mental illness even more. So I think there is an alternative strong position we can take without labeling Donald Trump.
I was just going to say that the title of my chapter is Donald Trump is A, bad, B, mad, C, both of the above. First of all, I want to say I think your position is very reasonable, and a lot of people have taken that position, so I think it's a very fair perspective to take. The only way in which I would disagree with you is that I think diagnosis does matter, and understanding the way this guy's mind thinks, as the panelists have expressed so clearly, gives us insight into his behavior and into the risks and dangers. But they're certainly not mutually exclusive. Eric Fromm